People don't know how to structure their content in a way that's easy for the listener to consume. And what happens is they share a lot of great information, and sometimes it comes out like a fire hose, like, oh my God, I have all these hundreds of things I want to teach you, and there's so much the human mind can't really grasp what it is that they're trying to teach, and so the listener tunes out. You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 267. If you're having a hard time getting your message out on big stages and popular podcasts, or even just attracting clients, tune in. You're going to want to listen to today's episode on authority frameworks. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hello and welcome, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's your host, Melanie Benson, authority amplifier to expert-based business owners. And today, I'm excited to share something with you that I discovered accidentally, but has served me really well in turning speaking opportunities and interviews and trainings into my best ideal client magnet. We're going to be talking about something I call authority frameworks. And these are a way to help you stand out in a crowded market, to eliminate that best kept secret syndrome, and help people understand the authority of your brand and the work that you do. Now, if you have my 7-step plan to get booked, get leads, and get 5-figure clients, then you know that speaking is a really important part of it. And so this is kind of a next step that you will want to use when you're working out how to really magnetize your message, which is step number 2 in the plan. If you don't yet have the plan, stop what you're doing, pause the episode, go right now to amplifywithmelanie.com. I have also linked this up in the show notes under resources, and get this plan. This plan is going to transform how you attract more of the great clients that want to work with you, and learn how to enroll them in higher ticket offerings that really serve them better and serve you better. So head over to amplifywithmelanie.com. You'll also get an invitation to join me in my free Facebook group, Amplify Your Authority. And that Facebook group is where we have daily threads, where we unpack these different strategies, give you a chance to connect. But I'm doing live trainings each week where I go deeper into these strategies to make the plan work. So you don't want to miss out on that either. Amplifywithmelanie.com. Now, let's talk about authority frameworks. What are they? Why do you need one? And what's it going to do for you? So an authority framework, in my experience, is a very powerful way to take what you teach and deliver it in a concise, memorable way. An authority framework gives you a way to take all of the different things you might want to try and pack into a time you're being featured as an expert, and give you a way to make it really stand out. And I'm going to teach you my authority framework model inside a framework. I call it the TAME Method because, and this is a little cheesy, so bear with me, but it's a way to tame all the noise that's out there and really inspire people to want to work with you. So TAME stands for teach, authority, memorable, engage. So let me unpack that for you. And this should give you a really great understanding of why this methodology works. So first of all, what I see happen, and I've interviewed over maybe 1,100 people now in the last few years, between my 2 different podcasts and all the interviews I used to do for my old CD club, and just lots of opportunities to pull the great nuggets out of an expert. I find that one simple thing happens often in these conversations, and that is People don't know how to structure their content in a way that's easy for the listener to consume. And what happens is they share a lot of great information, and sometimes it comes out like a fire hose, like, oh my God, I have all these hundreds of things I want to teach you, and there's so much the human mind can't really grasp what it is that they're trying to teach, and so the listener tunes out, and then of course the value opportunity is gone. And other times what happens is there's just a lot of rambling and going all over the place because they're winging it and it's just kind of coming through naturally, which isn't bad, but it isn't the most effective way to enrapture a listener and a potential client, or to create buzz and momentum with your work so that it's really becoming a magnet for you. So the first step is to teach and to structure what you have in a way that when you teach it, it's easy for the listener to grab onto it, to see themselves in it, and literally to see you as the expert. And so I like to teach in either 3, 4, or 5 points. I find that somewhere between 3 and 5 points is easy in any kind of context. If you've got a shorter opportunity, it's really easy to hit the high notes and just talk about a couple. If you've got a longer teaching opportunity, you're going to do a workshop, or you're doing an event, or you're going to use it in a book or anything like that, you can stretch things out and you can have multiple frameworks that you're using. So teach is the first component of the authority framework. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about how to figure out what to teach in a minute, but second is authority. And authority, when you teach it like this, what happens is you give off this crystal clear, confident, I know my stuff energy, and the listener begins to see you not just as one of many people, but wow, they really know their stuff, and it gives you an authority edge. And there's a lot of things we can do to help create that edge. This is just one of them. But when you are an authority, what happens is people listen to you differently. They start to recognize that you are an expert that could potentially really help them or someone they know with a problem or with getting to an opportunity that they want to reach. So these frameworks give this implied authority. And I started to recognize this in a couple of different ways. Many years ago when I was first getting started, I had a catchphrase about getting out of this bright, shiny object syndrome. And I started getting interviewed before events I would speak at, and I would talk about the bright, shiny object syndrome. And I had a 3-pronged framework to solving bright, shiny object syndrome. Sometimes I would teach it in 3, sometimes in 5, depending how much time I had. But what was happening was people were listening to the pre-interview, getting excited. They would come to the event and oftentimes say, like, I'm here because you were talking to me. That catchphrase of bright, shiny object syndrome, they didn't say that, but they were referring to bright, shiny object syndrome, and I knew I needed to be here because I wanted to learn from you. And oftentimes those people would sign up for my program and work with me. It made me the authority in their mind, right? And so they wanted to learn. I also recognized that my best performing Amplify Your Success podcast episodes have often been when the guest teaches their content inside of a framework. And I'll link up a couple of them, but 2 that come to mind right off the bat because they did it so well. One is Michelle Weinstein, the pitch queen. She is also a podcast host, and she was formerly, she pitched herself to get on Shark Tank, and she has a great story, but I won't get into it here. But the bottom line was she recognized how powerful selling was and being able to pitch what she does to investors and people who potentially might want to use her services. She teaches her framework inside of an acronym. I believe she used pitch. So I will link this up in the show notes if you want to go back and listen to that episode. Another one that's standing out for me, and I know you will know this name, is Bob Berg, friend of mine, who wrote co-wrote the Go Giver book series and has spoken all over the world. And if you listen to his episode he did on Go Giver selling, and he talks about all of his strategies inside a framework. He uses a framework to teach Go-Giver, selling Go-Giver, whatever strategy, leadership, networking, whatever element he's on. He teaches it inside of a framework. So one of the things that I think between the teach and the authority that happens is it also allows you to stay on track. And instead of kind of being in the flow, and we all know many of us, we like to tell really long stories, we can get sidetracked, we go down rabbit holes, right? And the podcast is not really the most effective place unless it's a really long podcast to tell super long winding stories, because you have a very short amount of time to really get your point across and share your value. And so I find that using the teaching components of a framework and helping you stay focused also adds to your authority, because people get this impression like, wow, they really know their stuff. So the third pillar of this methodology is being memorable. So I mentioned earlier the original time that I recognized the value of a framework was people would hear my pre-event talk and then come to the event. Well, what was happening is those same people were contacting me years later or coming back to coach with me again years later because the framework they learned from me was memorable. I was the authority in their mind, in their memory. So what happens with the authority frameworks, if you do them well, is people remember you and or the framework. And so there's two ways this can work. One, you become the memorable authority. But secondly, they remember, wow, I remember somebody teaching this at an event. And it was really like, I remember the blah, blah, blah formula they were teaching. And then they go and look for it and they find you by doing a Google search or going back to their notes or whatever it was. And so now you become, your formula helps them remember you as the expert. So when they're ready to solve the problem or they want to refer you out, it's easier for them to remember you. I found that a couple years ago, I created a new framework. It's called the ROCS Method. And I was using it to teach my magnetic messaging material, which is the second step the third step in my 7-step plan to get booked, get leads, and get 5-figure clients. And the magnetic messaging was really compelling. But when I started teaching ROCS Method inside a formula, it's ROCS, what was happening is I was having people say, I need to learn how to do that ROCS Method for me. Can you help me? I remember you did, and usually they would spell it with a K. They would say, I heard you talk about the ROCS Method. You're that person that does magnetic messaging, right? I'm looking for someone to help me. So the formula helps them remember the content and use it more effectively. So I like these frameworks, an acronym or a 7-step formula or a 5-step formula, or however you're going to create the framework. It makes it easier for people to grab onto and mnemonically remember what it is that you're trying to give them value around. Now, the last component of this model is engage, and this is engage the lead. So again, when you're using an authority framework, what ideally we want to do is we want to attract and move potential clients and opportunities into becoming real for us, right? And so the last step is engage, because we want when we do an authority framework right, we should have a transition from the teaching to a next step that it gets that lead to want more from us. So the entire point of doing a great talk or a great training or a great piece of content or a book or whatever that authority platform is that we're going to use is we want to move them from being interested to being intrigued, so they want to learn more, and being invested in working with us. I call it my golden thread. And when you do this well, you get them to engage with you in some way, shape, or form. It may be they're following you on social media, or maybe they're joining your free Facebook group, or they're getting on your list in some way, and then you're connecting with them and moving them into an action step that will really help you decide if you're the right person to help them with achieving that outcome or solving that problem. So TAME is just a clever way to help you remember: teach, authority, memorable, engage. That's what we're doing with an authority framework. Now, unpacking this and really finding your authority framework, it might be super easy and it might take a little bit of researching and exploring. I've been working with a couple different clients on their authority frameworks in Amplify Your Authority Inner Circle right now. And what I found is one of my clients, we had an authority framework kind of locked down for her. And then she, we've been kind of like coming up with her authority platform, which is where you're going to showcase your authority and really stand out in a crowded market and take the lead. You're going to lead, be a leader in that space. And so she finally claimed Twitter as her space. Yes, Twitter is not dead. And is going to do a Twitter chat there. So her authority framework shifted a little bit because all of a sudden we got crystal clear where she was meant to bring her superpower to life. And it just took off like wildfire. I get chills even thinking about it. It's so powerful to watch. And you can check her out. Her name's Deb Coleman. She does Social Trust on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. It's a really hot chat, and it's really taken off very quickly. Now, another way this looked was I worked with another client of mine who transitioned out of having a business that she ran, that she realized she didn't want to run that business anymore. And so we moved her into being a coach back into her industry. And so we created a framework for her to teach her methodology on creating an endless supply of clients for female lawyers. And I will hook that episode up here as well. Her name's Sharon Christie, and getting her the framework really helped her have the confidence to get out there and get booked and get more speaking, but also gives her a great framework on helping people quickly realize what problems she solves and how she can be of value to someone who is a female lawyer who wants to really ramp up the clients. So there are a lot of ways you can use an authority framework. You can use it like we've been talking about in podcast episodes, when you're being interviewed, in your own content, when you're taking the stage, if you're writing a book. I have another client who we are working on his authority framework, and we're putting it in a book that he's going to use as a lead magnet, as a authority positioner in his industry. So he's going to take that authority framework and drop it right into a book. The idea of authority framework is something, it's really unique to you. Okay, so don't take a acronym that someone else is using and, kind of tweak a couple things and make it your own. The reason why it works is because it is unique to you. It's really using your superpowers. It's pulling out what you do naturally and organically, and you probably don't even realize you're doing it, but it's doing it in a way that really helps you be seen as the authority that we already know you are, but shape it in a way that's memorable. So use the TAME method, see how it works for you. If you want to go deeper with this is one of the lessons we do in my inner circle. I'll link that up in the show notes just in case you're like jonesing on getting this solved this year and you're like, I need someone to help me really take things to the next level. You'll find really great value in the Amplify Your Authority Inner Circle coaching program. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you have an authority framework? If it is, what is it? Tell me about it. If you don't, how are you going to use this to find it? What are you going to do with getting booked and getting speaking gigs and sharing this framework in a bigger way? Tell me how this is going to land for you and what you're going to do about it. Let's keep the conversation going over in the Amplify Your Authority free Facebook group, amplifywithmelanie.com. Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. Be sure to join us right now in the Amplify Your Authority community at authorityamplifiers.com, and I'll share my 7 proven tips to be a highly paid expert that stands out in a crowded market. Plus, we're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.